to the inaugural episode of Bourbon South, the newest podcast here on the MPW Digital Network. You know me, Chase Parham from the Oxford Excellent Podcast, 5 days a week, and I'm going to welcome in who you will hear from every single week as we do this. Steve Thomason, local Oxonian, I guess the founder of one of the bourbon club in town, I guess is what we'll call it. Used to be, I think, a secret, you said, but getting a little less secret now that we're certainly doing a podcast. But Steve, you've already had a certain female really like your voice, and everybody else gets to hear you too on a couple test episodes. So welcome into this.
It's a pleasure to join you, Chase. Really looking forward to it. I think we might be on to something. Hopefully we can have some good chats, have a few good sips of bourbon, and kind of enjoy this thing.
Yeah, is everybody giving us a chance here today? It's not all about bourbon. Now, obviously, that's the theme of the show, but it's a lot of life stuff. It's a lot of conversation. It's thinking, sitting around, pour a glass, and talking about kind of whatever comes up. And obviously, we'll have some alcohol, some bourbon slants to that. But give us a few weeks. I think you'll like the people we talk to, some interesting people around town, around the country, from a little bit of everything. And you'll probably find something that you will enjoy with this. We've already taped several episodes, so you'll get one a week as we move forward and hopefully make something out of this. As you know by now from looking at the title, Ross Bjork joining us for the inaugural episode today. We taped this with Ross during his transition period. Today is the day he does start officially at Texas A&amp, but he came by the studio where we're doing these things at, and he gave us about 45 minutes, something like that, to just sit down and talk about his moves, some Ole Miss stuff, and just life. We talked bourbon, we talked life, talked a little bit of everything with Ross. So I hope you enjoy this one. You come back next week as we'll keep this thing going. So for now, here's Bourbon South, and here's Ross Bjork. Ross, appreciate you giving us a little time today. Around lunch right now. We usually do it a little later in the day, but around lunch for this one. You're in a transition period, I guess, if you will. Got a little while here. The athletics director at Texas A&amp. First time I've said that, maybe other than our flagship show the morning after it all went down. But in all honesty, we're going to talk about a lot of bourbon. We're going to ask you a lot of questions about that. But what's these weeks been like? What is sort of the transition when not just moving and family and all that stuff, but been at one place and gotten so ingrained in community and everything for so long, and you know, it's almost that split-second thing where you make a decision, I guess like anybody with any job, but all of a sudden it's a whole new deal and actually kind of competing now in a way.
Right. That's I've gotten a few emails from Ole Miss fans saying, hey, you're a competitor now.
Yeah.
You know, hey, we still like you, but you're a competitor. Get ready. You know, because it happens so fast. You know, and I had heard, you know, a couple weeks ahead of time that, hey, you're on the list, you might get a call, expect a call. You know, that call didn't happen, you know, until really the last minute. And so you can't really think about it. You've got to focus, obviously, on your job. And but I got a call on a Tuesday saying, hey, we want to have a conversation and then have a meeting, you know, the next day. And then by Thursday afternoon, it was a done deal. And then obviously the news broke on Thursday night. And then just an onslaught of messages between email, text, Twitter messages. It was close to 850 messages, like 500 text messages. And
so that's why it took a day to get back to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to file a complaint as well. It took a day to get back to me.
So
I think he was scared to talk to me, though. I think that's what it was.
I got all my text messages answered that weekend by sitting at my son's ball field, watching him play on Saturday in the hot sun in Atlanta before we went to Destin. So it's really been kind of a whirlwind. And then you have to help Ole Miss. Okay, what's Ole Miss going to do? Hey, we have SEC meetings. So sitting down with Larry Sparks on that Thursday afternoon, talking to him on Friday and Saturday. Larry, we have an executive athletic director meeting on Tuesday morning. You've got to have somebody named, you know, by then, you know, because somebody's got to represent Ole Miss, or you could have several people, you know. So you got to be ready. So helping Ole Miss sort of get ready, and then going to the meetings and kind of being in no man's land. You know, I wasn't officially casting votes for A&M. I couldn't cast votes for Ole Miss. So the first meeting we had, I had Keith on my right, Keith Carter, obviously interim AD. I had R.C. Slocum, the interim AD at Texas A&M, on my left at the first meeting. And so then you go through that, and it's like, okay, this is, in some ways, it's kind of cool. You're an observer, but you're advising or answering questions. I could still, you know, give my opinion in the meetings. And then they'd say, well, who do you represent, A&M or Ole Miss? And then, what's that?
Neither.
Yeah, neither. Yeah. I think I said I'm special advisor to no one that week. And then you just have all the personal stuff. How's your family doing? Are they prepared? We didn't tell our youngest until, the day of, because he didn't really understand it being 8. The oldest knew that I was on the list. He kept asking, have you got the call yet? He was fired up. He's been to College Station. He's been to football games there. He's got a friend already there, Jake Pivoto. So he was intrigued by it, excited about it. Sonia was just like, tell me what we need to do. I'm along for the ride. Make sure it's a great place. Obviously she's been with me on the journey, going to different places. And then you go to A&M, and it's just an onslaught of the introduction, the media, all kinds of different interviews.
People you need to know.
People you need to know, understanding all the different relationships and the dynamics, and just, it's a big place. There's a lot that you have to deal with. And just, people asked me this morning, I was on a radio show this morning, what's the difference? And I said, look, the fundamentals are all the same. Coaches, athletes, budgets, relationships, but the scale, it's just a bigger scale. Texas, 30 million people. They have 500,000 alumni. They're selling, 85,000 season tickets. I mean, the scale of it, you just have to know, okay, how do you prioritize? So a long answer to say it's been a whirlwind. It's been exciting. It's been sad, emotional, because you're leaving a great place. Like you said, we feel like we're entrenched here. We love it here. Somebody asked me, what's been your favorite stop? Oxford. It's a no-brainer, and Sonia and I met in Columbia, Missouri. Steve knows about Columbia, Missouri. But this has been our favorite place, and it's all because of the people. So a lot of emotion the last couple weeks.
One of our things every single week, we'll open a bottle of something. Since Ross became our inaugural show before the move, we had talked about it. I walked over, said, "Hey, we got something going on. You'll do it, right?" "Oh, yeah." And like 3 days later, he's gone to College Station. But it is what it is, so we stuck with it. But for the first show, we're going to go with birthday bourbon, as everybody's aware of this year too. Steve, you brought that one into the fold today.
It's a good one. I love the Old Forester birthday bourbon. It's pretty funny. The first bottle I found was maybe 4 or 5 years ago in a local store I used to stop in every now and then, and they had a kind of a shelf in the corner where it just seems like bottles nobody wanted got stuck, and I saw one and I tried it and I thought, that's pretty daggone good right there, and started looking at researching it, and it's blown up. This one this year I really like a lot. I think it's the hottest Old Forester birthday bourbon they put out, and it's good flavor, good taste. I think you can kind of count on that. Once a year, you're going to get a good bourbon. A lot of people fall asleep on Old Forester. Old Forester has some pretty good products. They put out some single barrels that I love. But no doubt, this one's a good one.
While you're the first guest to go public, or on the first one we're putting out, we have talked to someone else already. One of the things we're going to ask them is just, you come home at night, what's the one or two that you've always got on the shelf or always going to pop, whether it's something like a good thing, job changes, or the day you're leaving the Hugh Freeze, Jeffrey Vitter press conference, or whatever's going on. What's the 2 or 3 you got there that's always going to be on the shelf for you to open up?
Well, Steve, I'll give credit to Steve. My bourbon knowledge was very, very limited coming to Oxford, and that was back in the day. Coming to Oxford in 2012, I remember Sonia. We were coming from Kentucky, and so Pappy was obviously kind of bursting onto the scene, and she went to PJ's and she got on the list and got a bottle of Pappy, 10-year-old. Well, you can't do that now, right? I mean, there are no more lists unless you're like secret. So,
or the AD at a
major university. Sometimes you have connections. So Steve really got me started on more of a broad range. I think anything E.H. Taylor, it's smooth. It's simple. Whether it's the single barrel or the small batch, I really like. Steve's not a big rye guy. I think the rye E.H. Taylor is as smooth as anything. You can't go wrong with a Weller. So the Special Reserve, for whatever reason, was coming out hot and heavy this year, and so Michael Thompson got me a couple bottles of that through some connections. Steve got a bottle, so that's always a good pour. The Woodford double oaked. I mean, is simple, smooth. That's a good one just to have, and you can get it.
Yeah.
Obviously. And then beyond that, I think the secret stuff you really save for special occasions, like a Pappy or Weller 12 and Elmer T. He introduced me to that. I've got a bottle that I haven't opened of the Blade and Bow 22-year-old that I found, but the Blade and Bow regular, that's as smooth as anything, and so you're seeing that more often.
Chase,
those are some of the simple ones that just off the shelf, have a sip at night.
I just heard Ross say he's going to open that Blade and Bow 22-year-old before he leaves town and share it with us. That's what I heard.
Maybe we'll have to do that.
Absolutely.
If you call that out.
As you can see, Ross is on top of it because I've always said if it says E.H. Taylor, it's good. No doubt. All right. So, Ross, there possibly could be some Texas A&M fans listening to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What's the bourbon you're looking for right now? What would be a nice present to their incoming AD?
What is the so Weller just came out with what are they calling it? Full proof. It's the blue label.
Yep.
So I know it just came out in June, and so that's one it's a new release. Haven't found it yet. There's a place in Cordova. That's kind of a small little shop there that they say they're going to have it, so I may pop in there for my son's tournament next weekend. So that's the one I'm trying to get right now.
Well, word is Weller 12 in Texas is like spring water on the shelves. They get the highest allocation of any Weller 12, so you might be in good shape, and Chase and I might expect a bottle to make its way back here.
I'm going to have to find my Steve Thomason in Texas, my connections.
Yeah.
Bottle hunting has become one of your things a little bit, even road trips and recently and some different things. Everywhere you go, you try to hit the small shops, just in general. What's sort of the process?
Kind of depends on how much time do we have. Football trips. If you're playing a night game, you're sitting around all day Saturday. So Baton Rouge has been a good spot. We usually stay like 2 blocks away from a good store. And usually what'll happen, Steve does this, a few other friends do this, I'll do this. Is you're in a store and you snap a picture. Hey, they got this on the shelf. Does anybody want it? And then you kind of linger in the store, for 10 or 15 minutes. And if somebody answers, you grab it. If they don't answer, then you leave. And so in Columbia, South Carolina, for the NCAA tournament, if you want me to tell this story.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good story.
Yeah.
So we found, I went on a Thursday morning, I think what was it, Total Wine. Right there in Columbia. We got there on Wednesday. We had some time Thursday morning before all the meetings. There was a place not far, and I found a Widow Jane 12-year-old, the black label. And I had never seen it. Steve had talked about it. And so, selfishly, I just grabbed one bottle, but they had multiple bottles. And then I sent a note to Steve and another guy named Matt Strum, and I said, hey, they've got a couple more bottles. You guys want them? And thinking that I was going to be there till, Saturday or Sunday, with the team. Well, we get beat on Friday, but we had like 4 hours after the game before the flight could pick us up. And so I texted these guys. They're like, hey, if you can go back and get one. So I go back into the store. I grab one bottle. I grab 2 bottles. And the guy basically stops me. He's like, I can't sell you 2 bottles. And I'm like, well, you got like 20 on the shelf. Like, what do you mean you can't sell me 2 bottles? Well, this is a special allocation, and, I don't know if you're a regular customer or not, and, on and on about you can't do this, you can't do that, and, we don't get these very often, and so I'm just like, man, I'm only in your store like, once in my lifetime. I came here yesterday, I spent a couple $100, I'm leaving town like in an hour, and I'm racing through like rush hour traffic. All for my buddies, right? It's all about friendship.
Absolutely right.
And so finally convinced the guy, look, I'm from Mississippi. We don't get the good stuff all the time. Can you help a guy out? And he's like, okay, I'll sell you the 2 bottles of the Widow Jane 12. So that's what friends are for. So it is. It's kind of fun when you go to these other places just to walk down the street, pop in there. Steve has taught me, hey, what do you have in the back? And if you can kind of warm up, and if you talk like a little bit about it, they usually kind of open up, hey, come back here, we'll show you this or show you that. It happened to me in Little Rock this year for the football game. Found a couple good bottles. So Steve has taught me well, and I'll take that to Texas with me, because if they have big allocations, I'll have to try to deliver.
I expect you to keep delivering out there, Ross. And Chase, I have to confess, I think when Ross texted and found the Widow 12, I've been looking for a bottle for a couple of years. And he sent that text, and I think I maybe replied like, "That's great, Ross. I'm glad you got me one. I hope you have a chance to go back and get yourself one tomorrow."
Exactly.
Something along that line.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because we had that bottle at Bourbon Club, and it absolutely was. I took it home empty that night.
Fixate was gone by the.
It's good stuff. Right. Widow Jane is just strong. That's all there is to it. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But this Ross brings out a great point. Bourbon is more about just sitting there drinking a bourbon. It's the friendships you get with it. It's relationships, and I'll do that. I'll text guys. I'm out on the road, and hey, I'm going to hit a store. I'll try to give a heads up. I'm going to be in the store in 15 minutes. Have your phone ready, and if you're prepared and I find a good one, I'll get it for you.
It's kind of like schmoozing donors or anybody else, isn't it? The owner of the store. I mean, it's all the same skill set, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
It's practice for you as you move forward, I would think.
You kind of, with donors, you build a relationship. You kind of slowly walk into it and, ask, for their support. And so it's kind of the same thing. You got to be able to, and then close. Like, hey, can you give up that bottle? I'm paying full price, I'll come back,
With a lot of these guys and with the store owners, if they're having a conversation with someone that they realize, hey, this guy really likes bourbon. He's knowledgeable about it. I can tell he likes it. I can tell he's not in here trying to buy a bottle to flip it. And he's from a state where they don't get a lot of these things. A lot of times those guys, they talk. You talk bourbon for a while. It kind of suck them in. They're like, yeah, well, maybe I do have a bottle back here.
Were you interested in getting it as deep as you have? Like when you meet Steve and stuff starts happening. I mean, what was sort of when you get here? It's like, was it just more of a community element of just trying to meet people in general?
Just organic. Honestly, I really wasn't a fan of bourbon until I moved to Kentucky, which obviously, you dive right in. And so one of my best friends there. He had Sonia and I over to his house one night, and he had like 3 bottles of Pappy. And this would have been like 2010, like summer of 2010. So he was probably buying it off the shelf too back then. And so I was like, hey, this is kind of good. So then I found a bottle in Bowling Green, got a couple other bottles, and really hadn't planned on like getting into it like this. But then you come here and it's like, okay, yeah, it's part of the social scene. You get to meet cool people. I think one of the things about, starting the Bourbon Club that Steve formed is the diversity of people, doctors, lawyers, FBI agents, athletic directors, radio people, media people, food people, John T. Edge. I mean, I would have never really got to know John T. Edge that well, except through this type of club. And so, yeah, it just kind of grew organically, but again, I'm one of these people, like, I do my job enough. Like, we don't work 8 to 5. You're always on, if you will. But if you can find friends, sort of outside of work, then I think that's always healthy. And so it's kind of turned into just, hey, lifestyle, friendship more than anything. Hey, good taste, good bourbon. And then it's a cool sort of pursuit and hobby. Like, okay, if you're at a certain spot, can you track something down that you can't find, somewhere else?
How good are you at putting work away when you're done to some extent? I mean, is that something you have to learn over time, better than you were when you were at Western or somebody else? Like, how does that sort of work for you once you not necessarily leave the office, but when you're sitting on the couch at home?
I worked for two guys actually in Missouri. One, the first AD who hired me would be in the office till 9 o'clock at night. Okay. When you're single, you don't have a family, maybe you can do that. And then the next guy that came in, Mike Alden, was very, very similar, but he was probably like 7:30 at night. And I would usually stay late because I was single. And by staying late, I actually got a lot of projects thrown my way, so I could actually interact with him at a pretty high level because I was there till 7 o'clock. But once you have a family, I think 6:30 on a normal day is probably more like my schedule, where I'm going home around 6 or 6:30. When you start a new job, that's not going to be the case. So it'll be a grind at Texas A&M, 12, 14-hour days, which will be fine because you're meeting a lot of people. I'm usually one of those people that can turn it off. I can compartmentalize and say, hey, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about politics, or let's talk about family or kids sports, or And if somebody wants to talk about Ole Miss, that's fine too. I get it. But otherwise, hey, let's talk about something else. I'm pretty good about compartmentalizing, and I think you have to be in anything that you do, because if you get distracted and you're trying to do 5 things at once, you're not probably any good at one of those 5 things. So that's what I've tried to do as I've grown older.
You're overseeing hundreds of people in a way. Was there times where even the phone rings in the middle of the night, you go, oh crap, this is something that I'm whatever about, or even that you got to kind of take it as it comes, don't you?
You do. But I'm gonna put my phone in the kitchen.
Oh, you really?
I don't put it by my bed.
Okay.
Right, and so I don't think you can live that way. Now, unfortunately, I did that. That's my routine, and then you have somebody like Ty Laporte, who was killed in a car accident, late at night by the time the word. So I didn't get that message until 5:15 in the morning. So things like that, you hope that never happens. Luckily, I never had anything else like that, in the middle of the night. But put my phone, in another room, and I can usually go to sleep pretty easily. It's everybody has this. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're thinking of things But I usually get up pretty early if there's something to follow up on, I can catch it.
Your tenure here so different than when you signed up. I mean, you had 5 months before the Wiggins thing blew up, and then 5 years of everything else. When you look back on it, did you accomplish what you hoped in some ways? I mean, how do you sort of interpret your tenure as a whole?
When I got here, when I started in April 2012, I said, hey, we're going to be number 1 academically and athletically. And hey, that's the vision. Can you ever get there? I said the same thing this week at Texas A&amp during my transition. But you have to have that belief. And so I think we accomplished what we set out to do. Now, you're never there. It's always a sort of a campaign, but there's no election day. We have the best GPA. We have second best APR scores in the SEC, only behind Vanderbilt. Our graduation rates are 85%. Next year, they're going to be a point higher for Ole Miss. That'll come out in the fall. I mean, you're almost graduating 90% of your athletes. And so, and that's a 6-year window. So that's us. That's our leadership. Competitively, look, there's some sports that aren't as far along as you want them to be. We understand that. But I think the ingredients are there for all the sports. And then you look at softball and golf. They weren't even on the radar, not even close to being on the radar. You look at track and field and all the stuff that they've done, baseball gets all the attention, football gets all the attention, men's basketball gets all the attention. Obviously women's basketball has had a struggle, and that's going to be a total rebuild, by Coach Yo. So there's some things that you're like, hey man, these things never happened at Ole Miss. We finished top 40 in the Director's Cup 2 years in a row. I think Ole Miss will finish pretty close to that, in the top 40, 3 years in a row. That's never happened. Now, the disappointing part is the saga that we had. And I hate it. No one likes it. There's a lot of reasons why it happened. But I'm also, I can say I put my head down at night knowing that every time there's something that landed on our desk, we handled it with integrity. We used our values, and if somebody wants to argue with that and debate that, that's fine. We can all do that, but I know what we did, and I know how we handled it. So I think we did. We accomplished a lot of things in the last 7 years.
Ross, I know something I've always appreciated about you, and I know this from some of our mutual friends. I know you're a big leadership guy, and you've studied leadership. Talk to us a little bit about leadership and where you're learning the directions you want to go in that, just down those roads.
So we got to give Steve some media training, because I know Neil, who I'm sure will listen to this, hates that question. Talk to me about, right? Right, Neil?
There's no question, right?
Because it's not really a question. I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you on that one. I think leadership, can be very, very simple in a lot of ways. That if you have sort of a service, like it's not about you. How do you help other people? I think that's sort of the fundamental of it. So that's kind of my starting point on leadership. But I also think that your leadership style is dependent on the situation. So like the U-Freeze July 20th, 2017, man, that you had to be very, very firm and very, very direct, and you had to be very just straight. You couldn't have a lot of people involved in that. You had to know what the facts are. You had to be ready to make a decision very, very quickly, and you had to be the one to make that decision. Where in other cases, hey, maybe you're bringing more people around the table to make decisions. It's more of a collaborative approach. So I think your leadership style can be adaptable depending on the situation. That doesn't mean your values, are reduced. Doesn't mean your expectation level goes down. But your leadership style is probably dependent on what's the situation. What does that call for? Does that call for, hey, I've got to be, bam, I've got to just smack it head on and it's my deal? Or, hey, this is a group effort. We've got to have more people involved and deal with it that way. And then you're constantly learning. So I'm a big military leadership style study of all of that. Coach Luke introduced me to Jocko Willink, who's a former Navy SEAL. And he's got great sort of leadership principles about, taking ownership of everything. And when you walk in a room and something bad happens, saying, I got it. It's me. It's on me. I'm the leader. I'm responsible. Hey, I may not have been involved in it, but I got it because I'm the leader. So I think you have to constantly be learning. And so I study just different leaders, coaches, executives. I'm a big John Maxwell fan. He's a big leadership writer. John Gordon is another guy that I study a lot. And his deal is being positive. It's all about positive reinforcement, positive leadership, doing all the little things. And then any military, leadership lessons I think are always positive.
When you got up that morning, did you how sure or whatever were that we end up there with the freeze thing that day? What was that final day like?
I knew the night before, because we, the whole thing was, and I think we talked about this. We were transparent about sort of, hey, we met with U-Freeze and he admitted the conduct. I think was my quote. And so we met with him at around 5:30 on Wednesday, and kind of heard his side of it. And I walked out of there going, okay, this has to happen. I knew that he just could not be our coach, And I also said, okay, if everything were public, what would be the decision? You had to look at it that way. Some things aren't public and probably never will be, and they can't because it's a personnel file, if you will. But if everything were on the table, what would you do? To me, that had to be the starting point. And so I knew walking out of that meeting on Wednesday and I called the chancellor and I said, hey, here's how we need to do it tomorrow. We have to do it fast. It's a small group. So then Wednesday morning was, okay, what do the logistics look like of putting all this together? Where's everybody at? Who's the interim? And it's July 20th. I mean, coaches are on vacation. Hopefully they're out of here. So where's Matt Luke at? I called him. He was at McDonald's at his son's birthday party. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing right now? He's like, I'm at McDonald's. It's Cooper's birthday. And I said, hey, I need to see you at 4:00. Okay. But you can't tell your wife. You can't tell her where you're going. But I need you to come to my office. So I knew.
Wow.
Exactly. So I knew Wednesday night. We could do a whole podcast on that. I knew Wednesday night that we had to make a change. And then Thursday morning was about, okay, how do you put it all together? And it had to stay confidential. I mean, again, back to what I was talking about, keeping everything contained. We could only allow a few people sort of in the process. And then, and Chancellor Bitter, at the time, he was in Minneapolis. And so we had to get him back here. And that was a little dicey with weather, and so you're juggling, all the logistics and the timing, and where's the team, and but I knew on Wednesday that That's what
I'd argue you have a press conference without him potentially, but it'd be fun.
You mean without the chancellor? Oh, no, the chancellor needs to be involved in those type of public settings.
You couldn't have had two. Yeah, you couldn't have had two different situations between the way that ended and the way AK ended. I mean, you talk about 180s on two sides of this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, as you cross it out, but over the course, though, I mean, what you've seen good, maybe seen Sugar Bowls, all that stuff. How have you kind of grown as the leader and the athletic director from when you did get here in 2012? And I guess at the time you're the youngest in SEC or Power 5 or whatever. I mean, you've had plenty of opportunity to learn a lot in both directions, I would think.
I probably coming into it, I probably thought, you know what, you can kind of live on emotion, a lot of times, and you can cheerlead and you can get mad and you can be you can be emotional, and probably what I've learned through all of it is you can't really be emotional. Like I knew, and I've said this, we're on the stage, confetti's coming down, Chad Kelly MVP, everybody loved the Laramie Tunzel, throwback pass, right? Hugh Freeze trophy, Jeff Vitter's first day, and I'm soaking. I'm celebrating, but I knew, hey man, in 20 days. We're getting this letter from the NCAA. And so you're celebrating and you're soaking, but then, hey, reality is going to sit in 20 days. And so kind of that, hey, you can't get too high, too low kind of mindset. I probably really didn't understand that, coming into, this situation with all the stuff we've had to handle is you really can't get too emotional one way or another. It's just like Andy's deal. Andy's an open book. So he's going to tell you, hey man, it's not good. I don't know if I can turn this thing around. He's going to tell you that in December. And then you're going, no, wait, we got lots of season left to play. What are we doing here? We can't give up. Oh, I'm not giving up, Ross. But we're in a tough spot. And then January, he's like, hey, you know what? You're not going to have to fire me. Like, I get it. I know the business. And so you're like, okay. So then you can kind of work together on what the proper transition is. But again, you can't get too emotional about that either. You've got to just, okay, what is it? Let's deal with it. And, just try to execute it professionally where everyone can walk away saying, okay, they handled this the right way.
And going into the profession, just athletic administration or whatever, it has the potential for yourself and every coach. I mean, it could be a nomadic lifestyle. You have no idea how long you're anywhere at any point, do you? I mean, it could go anywhere.
Yeah, I think coaches have less control than ADs do, but in the modern world, athletic directors, they're probably on the hot seat more than they ever have been. In terms of making the right coaching hires. You have a controversy, things like that. Look at Michigan State. Their AD was probably thought of, Mark Hollis, as one of the best top 3 or 4 ADs in the country. Well, he has the whole, tragic, sexual, assault scandal that happened on their campus, not really in athletics. He loses his job, So it's very, very volatile, and you have to be prepared. Yeah, you may have to move around a lot. One of my mentors had a philosophy every 7 years as an athletic director. I never really believed that, and I still don't, even though 7 years is what happened here at Ole Miss.
Interesting, Chase. I think we may have stumbled onto something here.
I don't prescribe to that because I think, again, I know I could have stayed here a long time, but you go to a place like A&M, that's special opportunity. But that was a philosophy he had, was, hey, you know what? They kind of get tired of your speeches. They get tired of the same talking points. You can wear on people, just like coaches, So it happens. And again, if you're doing the right things and you're producing, then that's all you can rely on and just keep moving forward.
Was there a time during this, as at this point, I don't guess it matters, where you thought, hey, I may need to look around more than I have been? Or, how does that kind of go through your thought process over the last 3, 4, 5 years, whatever? I
think when you're a Power 5 AD, man, you got to cherish that job that you have. I was approached a couple times from like 2014 to 2016, and I'm like, why leave? I don't have to leave. It's Ole Miss. You're in the SEC. I don't want to work outside the SEC. Now that I know about this conference, I don't want to work, and I don't want to live in a cold spot. Like, we are spoiled. We've been in Miami, in Los Angeles, in Oxford. Like, I hate the cold weather. I never want to
shovel. Columbia now, you're like,
never want to shovel
the SEC,
snow.
but
Right, never want to shovel snow again.
It's a different world, no doubt about that. I went to a couple of baseball games. We lived up there 10 years and enjoyed our time up there. Midwest folks were great. We still have great friends up there.
It's a great town, college town.
But it gets cold and that wind blows. I could not imagine coaching baseball.
Blizzards, rolling through Kansas and Missouri. And so I never was looking or anything like that. But there's only 65 of us, that sit in the Power 5 chair. So I think that's what A&M was looking for, was who sits in the chair at the Power 5 level. And then the added bonus for me is I know the SEC, which they're new in the SEC. So they need somebody to, I think, navigate some of the newness there. And then, I have worked for 4 chancellors here. Right, so that goes in the back of your mind, like, okay, look, I have a contract at Ole Miss. Like I said, I think I could have worked here a long time, but you never know, right? You have all this uncertainty.
One specific chancellor comes in.
You never know. I mean, the number one person as an AD is who do you report to? And Larry Sparks is awesome, and this is nothing against Larry Sparks, but you also say, okay, in less than 8 years, I would have been on my 5th chancellor at Ole Miss. So, hey, what if that new person comes in and there's no alignment there? And he doesn't like what we're doing or doesn't see athletics the same way that I see athletics or we see it or the institution sees it. So when you get a call, you say, okay, it's a no-brainer because it's Texas A&M, but also, you know what, you want stability. And so you have to be able to provide that for your family. And so all those things kind of go into the equation, but it's not necessarily one thing over the rest of it.
Ross, you mentioned the SEC. Why the SEC? What makes the SEC so great?
Passion. I mean, stadiums are packed. There's financial resources. You have a big marketing platform with the SEC network. Unlike, the ACC network's getting ready to start, but I don't think it's going to be close. So you have just the resources. Great college towns, like we're setting in, today. Just a great platform. I think the competition level, you're playing against the best. So even if you're middle of the pack in the SEC, you're top 25. Mm-hmm. And not every conference can say that. So you have a chance, competitively. So those are all the things I think. And I think we're just leaders in legislation and sort of innovation, in the NCAA. And a lot of times that hurts the SEC. Like the third baseball coach. The reason why that didn't pass is because the SEC proposed it. So there's also this stigma of, well, the SEC is sort of the, big bully on the block. And, but I think that's a position of strength that we can capitalize on.
Yeah, it felt 100% like they just said, hey, since they're doing it, we're done. We're going to fight it. And I know Steve has some strong opinions. We'll probably get to it some point.
Oh, yeah, not now, because we would still be sitting here 2 hours from now.
But that's an example. Like, again, if the SEC proposes it, but that baseball thing.
We're going to have to pour another glass.
It's got to change.
You going to get the alcohol sales in over there by opening day? Where's it sitting?
A&M, I think, has some good plans in place.
Okay.
There's a couple, approval, with the regents and the chancellor's office and the presidents that they're going through right now. And then their concessions weren't necessarily built out for it. So they'd have to do a lot of portable. So they're working on that. I think something will come together at A&M. But I told them, hey, you guys go business as usual. If you need my approval or just blessing or whatever, let me know. But I think they're ready to move forward. Texas does not have all the sort of strange liquor laws like Mississippi has. So it's a little easier to do that if that's what Texas A&M wants to do.
You have a full assortment of cowboy boots and maroon blazers and type things.
I've already got cowboy boots being here in Mississippi.
Okay. Oh, you already had them anyway.
I've already got a couple.
Chase, let me just say this: if he doesn't have a good collection, this bourbon club that Ross might be a part of, that might be going away in a couple of weeks, he might have some merchandise after that night. Ross, I got a couple hard, tough questions for you. Chase has been pretty light on you right here.
Well, real quick, what'd you do with all the red and blue loafers and jackets and stuff now? I mean,
I think
you've had quite the color scheme.
Being over there the last couple of days, I can wear navy. I can definitely wear navy.
You can still wear navy.
I can wear navy. That because you can mix maroon and white and navy. So so I'll keep my navy, pants and shoes and stuff like that. But anything red or powder blue probably has to go. It was so funny. I went into Hinton on Saturday and talked to Whitney over there. Give her a little plug. And they have no maroon in there, obviously. But she had some swatches of a sport coat, 2 sport coats, a couple shirts. So I'm like, all right, I need to get those. So I'll have some stuff come from Oxford that'll.
I know we can actually get some. We get some pants for you. We can get some pants.
I think you know a guy, right, Chase?
You know what? I'm already hooked up with Nick at Blue Delta on some maroon pants, and I'm actually delivering a pair to Buzz Williams.
Okay. Yeah.
A pair of maroon.
Nice.
Blue Delta. The Holland and Sherry. Look, all the coaches at A&M. That's all I heard about this week. Hey, you got to hook me up with Blue Delta. Hey, you got to get Nick over here to do a fitting. So I think we'll be connected to Oxford through Blue Delta and many other things. So, but yeah, the maroon will take some getting used to, but I think we can handle it.
I think you'll pull it off. All right, so tough questions here. Okay. So you and the boys, are we changing MLB, NBA teams? How's that going to run?
It was so funny. We were driving around College Station yesterday, and we were talking about the Rockets, being close to Houston, and the guy that was showing us around was asking Paxton, our youngest, who's your favorite team? And he's like, the Lakers.
Lakers all the way.
Why? Well, Lonzo. He said Lonzo and Wilt Chamberlain.
Interesting.
And he's 8 years old, so everything, he's discovered Wilt Chamberlain on YouTube. And then Peyton, our oldest, he was born in Los Angeles, so he's died. So I think we're still Lakers, with the boys, and obviously I'm sure we'll go to Rockets games, being right down the road. So, but yeah, that's probably not going to change.
What about MLB, Major League?
MLB, Cardinals. I grew up a Royals fan, and now I'm a Cardinals fan as well. The boys, Red Sox, they loved going to Fenway a couple years ago. We did that a couple years ago. So they follow them, and they're Cardinals. So maybe it'll switch, to the Astros.
I think there's that thing in you, once a Cardinal, always a Cardinal. That's I've been a Cardinal since I was 5 years old. I remember sitting on my granddaddy's porch listening to ball games on, the AM station in Tupelo. Went to see them a million times. But, it's interesting, though, because you are about to get into, be around a lot more of the professional markets, which...
Texans, Rockets, Astros, soccer.
Probably a little weird for your kids now. Ole Miss is going to play A&M in a few months. Like, hey, we used to be doing this and this and whatever. It's probably a little confusion for at least the younger one.
So obviously we're here, for the next couple of weeks, and they gave us, a bunch of A&M stuff. And yesterday the boys were like, "Can we wear A&M stuff around Oxford?" And I'm like, "Not yet, not yet."
Just a good call.
I said, "You'll get. Your friends are going to give you a hard time. People may not quite understand it." I said, Just chill. We'll just kind of ease into it, There'll be plenty of time to wear A&M stuff, but we got Nike stuff now, and Texas A&M is Adidas. So there'll be a lot. I know there'll be a lot of probably giveaways of Nike and Ole Miss stuff.
Have you practiced your howdy yet, Ross?
I have.
That didn't sound as natural the first time, so
I had to say it. I had to say it Monday, And what's cool about it is when you say it to a crowd, they say it back. You say howdy, it's like howdy, the whole place.
Oh.
The whole place does it. I mean, first time it kind of catches you off guard.
I laughed. One of the ladies in my office went to A&M grad school, and she was going to visit there. And we were actually laughing about this because I heard you say howdy on your first radio broadcast, and we were laughing about it. And she goes, we pulled on the campus, and we were looking for a place, and there was just some kid on this corner, and he goes, "Howdy, y'all, can I help you?" And she said, "Man, I thought, man, they do it right here. They have these guys strategically placed." And she goes, "Then I finally figured out, no, that's what they do. That's it."
Apparently, there's a group of older alumni. They don't say alumni over there. Former students. So it's former students. Former students walk around campus with shirts that say howdy, and just to try to keep that ingrained in everyone. So you would think a guy from Dodge City, Kansas, would understand how to say howdy. So I'm getting used to it.
You met Reveille yet?
I did not meet Reveille, no.
You did not?
No.
Okay.
I have not met her. It's a her.
Yeah, it's a her.
I haven't met her yet.
I'm behind. Is this the dog?
That's the dog.
Yeah.
The mascot?
Very revered, yeah.
Right. Mascot.
Interesting.
Yep. I met the commandant of the Corps of Cadets,
Okay.
which obviously is very, very important there.
You're going to enjoy that. I've always been so pleased and so happy. I think we've always done a great job, and especially with Ross, of recognizing our military here at Ole Miss. Yeah. That's the big thing to me. And so I know you're excited to get to continue that.
And the whole Bush, the whole George Bush legacy is all right there in College Station. So they have a Bush School of Public Policy, and so it's all about leadership and government. So engaging with things like that will be. They produce the most amount of CIA agents as well.
Interesting.
At Texas A&M. So just kind of being around all that and forming those relationships will be pretty neat.
Coming full circle, what'd you think of the birthday bourbon?
I thought it was great. Smooth, went down great. Had a little sweetness kind of at the end. So
good little pop in the middle.
That's always the best kind.
Not a bad one at all. Have you found a bourbon club yet over there? Have you started looking?
I haven't. But as we're house hunting over there, that's one of the things Sonia's worried about the closet and the kids, and I'm like, all right, is there a bourbon cabinet already there, or do we have to build one? So that's going to have to come, with the house, either already there or we're going to have to put one in. So that was part of my house hunting exercises in College Station.
I like your train of thought there, Ross.
So preparation, you got, I guess July 8th is when it fully starts. And I mean, do you kind of last thing, is there a plan in place for, not like a President 100 days, but like, hey, this first month I got to get this done, or is it more, can you ease into it for lack of a connotation there?
I think what you have to do is, and similar to when I started here, is how early can you build relationships and get to know, everyone. So that's from the mayor to the police chief, to all the people on campus, and I was able to meet a lot of them this week. But sitting down with them and saying, okay, how do we work together already? What's the relate? So, kind of that first 100 days is you got to meet everyone, And then I'm starting in July, so the campus will be quieter. But then August will heat up, more events. First game's on August 29th. It's a Thursday night. So it's going to be really, I think, just meeting people, and meeting them proactively versus, hey, I got to meet you because something bad happened, or we have to talk about something. I want to meet them less, formal and get to know them. And so that'll really be what I tackle first, is meeting people.
I'll add one more, and I didn't prepare you for this. You left Ole Miss after this long. What's kind of your advice for people here? And what sort of message do you try to leave people here with?
Probably repetitive, but I think it's the same thing when I started, is, hey, look, you're only as good as you are collectively. And, there seems to be a divide, and I don't know how big it is. You can't, unless you surveyed every single one. But you're only as strong as you are collectively. So you may disagree with certain things, but I said it when I got introduced here, is pull the rope in the same direction. The best thing to do is be all in Vaught Hemingway. Pack that stadium. You know what? If you want changes, or you want whatever new, and you don't like leadership or whatever, the worst thing to do is boycott, because then you have no say-so. You have no voice. And so what I would say is, you got to be all in. You got to be pulling the rope. That's the best way to get over the hump. I think the ingredients are here, but we need people. Ole Miss needs people. You got to be on board. At A&M, look, they're all in. They're on board, and they're 9-4. They're supporting Jimbo. He's still building it. You go to a basketball game, the student they're all in, and so that's what I would say is, hey, you may not like me. Maybe you're happy that I'm gone. There's probably people that are. I get it, but support the university. the student athletes, they chose Ole Miss. So I think people should support them. So that's what I would say is, let's get that rope and grab it and support Ole Miss, and we'll be cheering from afar, and except when we play each other, obviously. But it'll be fun to stay connected and always be part of the program.
Appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.